So this AUKUS panel is going to be done in two parts. First, we're going to introduce Senator Reid. He's going to come up and offer framing thoughts on the agreement. He will then sit down and we will introduce two panel members who will give their individual thoughts, after which they will take Q&A. Very good. Welcome back, Senator Reid. As mentioned this morning, Senator Reid grew up in Cranston, Rhode Island. He attended the United States Military Academy at West Point and Harvard Law School, elected to the House in 1990 and the Senate in 1996. He's currently serving as the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Sir, we look forward to your comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's nice to be back again, and I want to welcome Admiral Houston. Thank you, sir, for your service to the Navy, and Lisa Radocha, who will actually be the intellectual spark of this conversation. I will withdraw to the background. So that's, you should feel relieved. Again, this has been a very exciting conference, very productive. Today, the Admiral and Lisa will be discussing AUKUS, which is a critical topic, part of our Indo-Pacific strategy, which is so critical in the days ahead. You know, China, we recognize, has emerged as the primary potential threat to the United States. It's the only country in the world with the economic and technological capabilities to mount a serious challenge to our interest and the interest of our democracies across the Pacific. And for the past several decades, China has studied the United States' way of war and focuses efforts on offsetting our advantages. And it's significantly increased its fielding of hypersonic weapons, advanced fighter aircraft, naval surface and undersea capabilities, and a growing nuclear capacity. We are reaching a critical turning point in the history of the world. This was the first time in the next few years where we will have a trilateral nuclear competition. The Cold War was based on a bilateral game theory approach to mutual assured destruction, etc. Now we've introduced a new player with incredible capacity, building it right now, and we have to start rethinking our approach to many things, including the nuclear deterrence. Now, one of the positive aspects of all this has been our agreement with the United Kingdom and Australia to work together to deter China. And this powerful partnership is essential to ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific region and dramatically improving our capabilities and increasing our engagement in the region. This is truly a force multiplier, and we need it as the Chinese continue to increase their forces. It lays the foundation for a significant integration of undersea and broader military capabilities ever achieved. The United States' next generation submarines, including those built in New England, and I will remind you, all submarines begin in New England, across the bay. These submarines are essential for power, projection, deterrence, intelligence, and sea control. And the long-term submarine agreement announced this year holds real promise for American industry and workers. Successful implementation of this plan will require responsible oversight and a stable industrial base. In fact, we have to think very hard about our present capacity, our future capacity, and how do we get from here to there. We have to be realistic about what capacity we have to produce now and in the future, and about the needs and capabilities of the submarine fleet. And I'm encouraged by what we can achieve when we work together. But we need a plan with benchmarks and the budget and resources to match. Now, I commend Australia for their substantial and unprecedented commitment to invest in the United States submarine industrial base, and we must ensure those funds are spent very wisely. To that end, I'm pleased that this year's National Defense Authorization Act in the Senate includes a number of provisions that will help accelerate AUKUS. The bill expresses a statement of policy in support of the partnership and requires the Secretaries of State and Defense to designate AUKUS coordinators for their respective departments. It also requires an implementation plan for Department of Defense activities to implement the agreement. Lastly, the bill includes a series of provisions designed to streamline foreign military and direct commercial sales to Australia and the United Kingdom. That topic was touched upon several times in the conference, and I expect these provisions will serve as a foundation for further legislative efforts necessary to implement AUKUS in the months and years ahead, but also as a paradigm, if you will, for expanding our collaboration with reliable, trusted partners across the globe in terms of the transfer of military equipment. And recognizing the critical role that our naval forces play in the Indo-Pacific, I'm pleased that this year's NDAA provides increased support for the high-impact research of the Office of Naval Research, DARPA, and the Naval Undersea Warfare Center here in Newport. As the plans for AUKUS Pillar 2 continues to take shape, these organizations and the critical research that they are conducting will be central to Pillar 2 activities. Many of you gathered here today are already sharpening our innovative edge through the new development of capabilities and the modernization of operational concepts for surface and undersea warfare. This web of innovation between the Navy, with our AUKUS allies, and with our industry partners give us a strategic advantage over the coercive research and intellectual property policies China often engages in. These advantages will be paramount to our success in the Indo-Pacific theater. Our shipbuilders and the leaders of the submarine program must work to meet the high goals that have been set. We cannot afford to fall behind or below numbers already set forth. And if vessels aren't joining the fleet on time and on budget as planned, there must be continuous assessment, oversight, and accountability. There is broad consensus that the United States' greatest comparative advantage over China is our network of partners and allies around the world. Strengthening this network should be at the center of our strategy for the Indo-Pacific, and AUKUS does just that. We have much to do, but I am encouraged by the progress we are making through discussions like the one we're having today, and I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you. You know, it's my distinct pleasure to turn the discussions over to Vice Admiral Houston and to Lisa. Ma'am, sir.
Thank you, Senators, for those superb comments. We're now going to hear from two more representatives of the government, Vice Admiral William Bill Houston, Commander Submarine Forces, also Commander Submarine Force U.S. Atlantic Fleet, and Commander Allied Submarine Force. In the first role, Commander Submarine Forces, he is the undersea domain lead for the U.S. Navy and also is responsible for developing the Submarine Force's strategic vision. As Commander Submarine Force Atlantic, he commands all Atlantic-based U.S. submarines, crews, and supporting shore activities. As Commander Allied Submarine Command, he is the principal undersea warfare advisor to NATO strategic commanders. His previous assignments have included Deputy Director for Strategic Targeting and Nuclear Mission Planning, United States Strategic Command, Director of Operations Naval Forces Europe Africa, Deputy Commander U.S. 6th Fleet, Commander Submarine Group 8, and Director Undersea Warfare Division OPNAV N97. Ms. Linda Radocha is the Executive Director for New Construction Submarine Shipbuilding Programs within PEO Attack Submarines. In that role, she provides executive leadership across a portfolio that includes Virginia-class submarines, SSNX, Advanced Submarine Systems Development, and Submarine Stealth Integration Programs. Ms. Radocha was appointed to the Senior Executive Service in 2019. She previously served as the Executive Director Combatants in PEO Ships, where she directed complex new construction shipbuilding programs defining the 21st century surface combatant force. She also served as Deputy Program Manager for DG-51 class shipbuilding program, as well as having supported the Marine Corps' Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle program. Sir, ma'am, thank you. Welcome. We look forward to your comments.
All right, Admiral Pandolf, Senator Reid, it's just great to be here. I thank the Alliance for setting this up. I will tell you, I'm an anchor man in terms of like a class ranking. Lisa is the anchor woman in a tug of war, and she is the heavy hitter up here. So she's the one who's really got the expertise. I will talk to you as a force commander that AUKUS, just like Senator Reid talked about, was a free and open Indo-Pacific region, which is absolutely critical to our national security and world stability. I'd also be remiss if I didn't talk to you about how close our ties are with Australia. When you take a look at Australia, I qualified for command on the Australian submarine US Rankin, not US, the Rankin. I did that in 2007. We collaborate with both the United Kingdom and Australia in the undersea closer than in some cases we do with the rest of our Navy and the joint force in our submarine force. Exceptionally close bonds. We share water space. We share operations. Very, very close. Australia is a full partner with us on our combat system, our heavyweight torpedo. The United Kingdom, via the Polaris Sales Agreement, when you take a look at that, it's a document that was signed in 1963. We share components on the same strategic deterrent. It is that collaboration that have made both of our nations stronger and more secure for both Australia, the United Kingdom, and the U.S. But AUKUS takes us beyond this. AUKUS takes us to some of our most sensitive and important technology when it comes to nuclear propulsion. It shouldn't be lost on any of us that we're approaching the 75th year of naval reactors, 70 years merely of nuclear propulsion with Nautilus underway on nuclear power. And nuclear power gives submarines, especially our submarines, the asymmetric overmatch that Senator Reid talked about. It gives us unmatched stealth, unmatched endurance, unmatched speed, unmatched capability, and that capability is absolutely critical to national defense and security in that Indo-Pacific region. And with that nuclear propulsion comes the responsibility of the safe stewardship of it. As you know, as we talk about that stewardship, we had 3 Australian officers graduate nuclear power school in South Carolina. Those officers right now are at nuclear prototype training, and they will graduate in January of this year, go to the Submarine Basic School in New London, Connecticut, and then they will go to U.S. submarines in the Western Pacific and get time on Virginia-class submarines. The next cadre of officers commence nuclear power school in October, and those officers in those 2 initial cadres represent the first XOs and commanding officers of the first Australian submarines, nuclear power submarines. And besides learning to operate nuclear power submarines, we're helping the Australians now with developing their own maintenance capability to maintain these. Australians already have a wonderful class of submarines, the Collins class, but there's intricacies with nuclear propulsion and those power plants and that steam-driven power plant. And we've assigned Pearl Harbor Shipyard as the lead maintenance activity to help develop and train the Australians in how we do maintenance. And we're going to help train their civilians and military personnel. And ultimately, that is to serve as the basis of them having their own fast attack submarine squadron in Western Australia. We have conducted multiple port visits in Stirling, their Western Australian naval base. North Carolina just was pulled into Australia on 4 August. Tremendous support there. We're going to have increased port visits there. And when you take a look, we're approaching the 2nd anniversary of AUKUS this September 15th. I'm going to talk to you about what that AUKUS and that optimal path really means. In March of this year on the Missouri, And if you haven't gotten a picture of our CNO, the first Sea Lord, and the CNO of the Australian Navy all together on the Missouri inside that wardroom, it's a wonderful picture, and it's very strategic. You look at the last time our allies were together like that following World War II in Tokyo Bay, it's a very poignant moment there where you see where we're bringing our allies back together. And what the optimal path talks about, it talks about a condition-based approach to implementing AUKUS. And in AUKUS, what we are doing is we're sharing U.S. nuclear technology, U.S. tactical technology, and we're partnering with both Australia and the U.K. to enhance all of our security and undersea capabilities. We have done in this first phase of AUKUS, which is improving and conducting more and more port visits in Australia. We've already had Asheville pull in. We've had North Carolina pull in. It is a port visit that we are increasingly going to Western Australia and showing our ability to operate with our allies in that region. The United Kingdom will eventually have submarines visit Stirling. It's a much further distance for them. And again, it is very good for us to have that familiarity with Stirling. As early as 2027, we will have a squadron of Virginia-class submarines called Submarine Rotational Force West in Australia. Those will be U.S. Virginia-class submarines manned with both Australian and U.S. sailors. And we will do that so Australia has the ability and experience operating nuclear submarines. And part of that is to help develop their infrastructure, their maintenance, their trainers, and everything you need to operate and maintain a nuclear submarine force. Pending congressional approval, the next phase of AUKUS would be to sell Australia up to 2 in-service Virginias, 1 new construction Virginia, with an option of potentially 2 additional new construction Virginia-class submarines. And this will systemically and systematically grow Australia's submarine force such that they have a sovereign capability there. And lastly, we shift into the final phase of AUKUS, where SSN AUKUS, which is going to be British and Australian built with a heavy infusion of U.S. technology, both in the propulsion plant and tactical systems, will be built into the 40s. Lisa's going to talk heavily about that industrial base and the acquisition element of there. I'm going to go ahead and talk about in-service maintenance because I'm heavily involved with in-service maintenance. Former CNO Admiral Gilday in May assigned me as the accountable officer for submarine maintenance in public shipyards. So since that day, we were at 60% of our SSNs were operationally available. In August, we're up to 67, and we're increasing that number. How are we doing that? We're going after 3 fundamental areas. 1, just basic execution in the shipyards. That's blocking, tackling, how you conduct the maintenance in the shipyards. Number 2 is material. How we manage material, especially on Virginia class, a COTS-based submarine that we are working to go ahead and ensure it maintains its modern capabilities. And the last area is modernization and planning. We make great strides in that. We have already saved more than $170 million since May 1st. We, as a Navy, have brought better material support, better modernization, that better planning. We've gone from approximately about 50% modernization, being ready for your modernization package, to nearly 100% at availability commencement. We have significant work ahead of us. The Navy has made this a priority. The Navy has already programmed over $2 billion for in-service maintenance to improve that, which is absolutely critical. I will tell you some other things that the Navy has done. PEO SSN under Admiral Rucker, Lisa, Stephanie Link, that team is now just not responsible for acquisition. They're responsible for the sustainment of the Virginia class. What does that mean? What's being acquired needs to backfit in the earlier Virginias, it's cradle to grave responsibility for the Virginia class. It takes expertise in that Virginia class to help do that in service, and their effort has been absolutely critical. Where previously it was bifurcated between PEO SSN and PEO UWS and NAVC. NAVC itself, the technical branch, has been very instrumental. Just by pure engineering analysis alone, they've removed over 100,000 resource days from availabilities to date. My maintenance operations center that I have stood up since May 1st has removed another 70,000 plus resource days from availabilities in execution or planned. That means that we can do more work that needs to be done and get these submarines back to the fleet as quick as we can. The other thing I will talk about is Virginia. As much as we are familiar with it, Virginia is still relatively a new class of submarines. Virginia was delivered in 2004. The USS Virginia just went through their midlife depot maintenance period, the first of the Virginia class. We are learning significant amount from it engineering-wise, and that's allowing us to improve the maintenance and remove maintenance items that are not required, making it more and more efficient. Naval Supply System Command, Defense Logistic Agency have been absolutely critical in addressing material part issues we've had. We had 4 public shipyards that operated uniquely and independently. They all operate under the same operating system now, ordering parts, ordering material. It would seem that if you're doing an availability in one shipyard on a Virginia, you'd order the same parts on a different Virginia in a different shipyard. Well, we weren't. We've now standardized that, simplified the planning and material acquisition. And that is a large part of the $2 billion is going to the material. I also need to mention private industry. We are outsourcing furiously to private industry. We've outsourced entire avails to Electric Boat and HII, and we are also outsourcing at the individual project simple things such as main ballast tank work, sail work, torpedo room work. Those things we have partners in industry, valve work, pump work. Lisa will talk more about that, but that's the submarine industrial base that's absolutely critical. And all these improvements are absolutely necessary, not just for our submarine force, but for AUKUS. Strong, resilient, skilled maintenance capability is foundational to a strong and capable submarine force, which in turn is foundational to national and international security and stability. The undersea force represents a strategic advantage for us and our allies. Working together, we'll strengthen that advantage. Our nations are committed, our navies are committed, and our submarine forces are committed to further trilateral collaboration. We are leading the way in integrating the best each nation has to offer, design, capability, and technology to develop state-of-the-art submarine ready to execute mission promoting free and open Indo-Pacific. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Thank you. All right, thank you. First of all, thank you, Vice Admiral Pandolf, for the introduction, and Senator Reid, as always, for your remarks. And thank you, Vice Admiral Houston, for being my co-panelist here today on this important topic. And I apologize up front that if you were expecting Rear Admiral Rucker and maybe a couple props and a little bit more flair in the presentation, you're kind of stuck with me, but I am his executive director for new construction submarines, and I'm here to talk to you about how it is we're doing in our new construction as well as in our in-service, and talk a little bit about how AUKUS fits into that. So Vice Admiral Houston just talked to the phases and importance of AUKUS. Which is a generational opportunity. The optimal pathway is trilateral. It's a partnership that builds international capability via a deliberate, joint, and collaborative effort. AUKUS will strengthen our defense industrial bases collectively and meet our shared security objectives with Australia and the United Kingdom. This is a monumental opportunity, a generational endeavor that will result in innovation, growth, and mutual development. As Dr. Mara Carlin, Assistant Defense Secretary for Strategies, Plans, and Capabilities recently said, AUKUS will strengthen U.S. and allied submarine industrial capacity, which is key to modernizing, innovating, and maintaining our military and economic competitive edge today and in the future. So it's important to recognize that the undersea warfare is one of the most important missions in the DoD, and submarines are important battle force vessels in our Navy. Attack submarines stealthily prowl the depths, perform highly sensitive missions, and hold any adversary at constant risk. Given their capabilities, construction and sustainment of our submarine force requires a continuous focus on safety and nuclear power stewardship due to the complexity and the difficulty of that construction effort. The unprecedented demands on the submarine industrial base, or SIB, requires a whole-of-nation effort to achieve and sustain these capabilities and throughput. So I thought it would be good to give a quick summary of where we are today with submarine construction, attack submarine sustainment, what we're doing with the SIB, including some accomplishments, and how it all connects to enable AUKUS. The SIB is supporting the most comprehensive submarine recapitalization in nearly 50 years, during which time American manufacturing and shipbuilding capacity atrophied more than 60%. The U.S. is simultaneously replacing our sea-based strategic deterrent with the Columbia class, transitioning our attack submarines, SSNs, from the Los Angeles class to the Virginia class SSNs, and replacing the guided missile submarine capability with extended-length strike-optimized Virginia Payload Module, VPM submarines, which is a variant of the existing submarine SSN class for Virginia class. And those additional vertical launch tubes are for conventionally armed guided missiles. So this once-in-generation ramp rate and systemic challenges facing our industrial base have resulted in a current annual production rate a little bit less than what we need. We're about 1.2 to 1.3 and to our goal of 2.0. So the construction rate of 2.0 per year is for the SSNs, for Virginia class. And coupled with the planned Columbia, as it ramps up to serial production planned for 2026, that's what we call our 1+2 rate. Our 1 Columbia plus 2 Virginia class, which is the goal during those years at which Columbia is in serial production. So our shipbuilding partners, Electric Boat and Newport News, and their supporting high-tech supplier base, many of you are here from that supplier base, we're working to achieve this 1+2 rate in 2028 as we build up from a 25-year drawdown, resulting in post-war peace dividend. But it's not the quantity alone. It's not just the 1+2 that drives this industrial base. It's the size of each submarine that has a direct correlation to the workload across the SIB. The recapitalization process to achieve the 1+2 cadence actually increases the demand across the SIB from what would be a single Virginia-class SSN per year back in 2015 to a workload equivalent of about 5 SSNs. And how do we get to that? Well, 1 Columbia is equivalent in tonnage and effort to about 2.5 SSNs. And each of the VPMs, the Virginia Payload Module, is equivalent to about 1.25 SSNs. So when we're at 1+2, that takes us from what would be a traditional Virginia class of 1 per year to nearly 5 per year in tonnage and in effort. So while some would call that a massive challenge, and we are clear-eyed about this goal and the amazing opportunity it presents as we are moving across and working across the enterprise to build to this requirement. And while building the new submarines, and as Admiral Houston just mentioned, we also have to maintain our existing submarine force. A robust public and private shipyard maintenance capability is necessary to conduct repairs, modernize the force, and, if necessary, repair battle damage in a time of conflict. The sustainment SIB supports a similar but different discipline from new construction. The 4 naval shipyards, as was just mentioned, Portsmouth, Norfolk, Puget Sound, and Pearl Harbor, the 2 Trident SSBN refit facilities at Kings Bay and Bangor, and the dedicated portions of the yards at EB and Newport News that perform maintenance, sustainment, and refueling operations for our nuclear-powered submarine force. And so this team must first ensure that the SSBN availability meets Navy strategic deterrence requirements. And this remains the #1 priority. But in addition to that, and as we were talking, and as was just mentioned, the attack submarines maintenance must also execute. So in the last 2 years, our availability has increased from 60% to 67%, and we are continuing to work to improve this target to 80% availability. And to support that necessary increase, we're looking across a number of key lines of effort to to achieve the sustainment productivity as well as the availability of those submarines. We've developed a 15-year SSN maintenance strategy, and we've identified key investments in the PB24 budget that will increase our confidence in execution of planned maintenance in the public shipyards, as well as continued overhaul work for the private sector shipyards for fiscal year 24 and beyond. The Virginia-class material strategy and additional focus efforts in the area of supplier development, strategic outsourcing, shipyard infrastructure, and workforce development will help drive improvements to SSN maintenance and sustainment. And as part of the POM 25 budget process, similar to every budget year, the Navy's working in concert with OSD to evaluate what additional investments may be needed and where to continue this important effort. So what exactly do we need to do to achieve these goals that I've just discussed? The recapitalization of the U.S. submarine force, plus the investment in AUKUS, requires continued significant investment in U.S. facilities, infrastructure, and workforce. The health of the submarine industrial base is vital to meeting our national defense strategy. The submarine recapitalization effort creates a large number of hands-on jobs across the nation. Targeted workforce growth includes many areas, to include trade workers, welders, ship fitters, electricians, machinists, pipe fitters, painters, electronic technicians, supporting disciplines. So think planners, estimators, material managers, contract specialists, project management. Because of the complexity of the process, the project management to chart out the way you're doing the work and what is needed when the material's coming in, and all of those sequences is highly complex, and we need to train those folks as well. The STEM fields, as always, are important. Your engineers in structural, electrical, mechanical, and nuclear, as well as designers, test coordinators, metallurgists, computer science. You get the idea. It is a broad-ranging effort that taps into multiple skill sets. So significant investments into the submarine supplier base will also produce increased volume of basic material, specialized materials, and engineered components that are required for modern nuclear-powered submarine construction, such as steel and specialty metals, high-tech castings and forgings, electrical components, combat systems, propulsion plant components, valves, pumps, pipes. These are all things, actually, Vice Admiral Houston and I were touring Quonset Point today, and these are staples of submarine construction, and we had robust discussion around how those pace construction effort and how those play into the overall process. And so that, absolutely part of the process here as we look to uplift across the industrial base. So as Australian ambassador to the United States and former Prime Minister of Australia, Dr. Kevin Rudd, recently said, the expertise in the United States Navy and American shipbuilders will be invaluable to Australia as we, develop our own sovereign submarine industrial base while boosting the resilience of our allied submarine supply chain and furthering security objectives of all three AUKUS partners. So it was mentioned that we have funding that's in the budget, but certainly we've invested funding to date that's being deployed across the submarine industrial base. So I thought I would mention a little bit of that next. From 2018 to 2023, in partnership with Congress, OSD and the Navy have substantial SIB investments underway. Approximately $2.3 billion across 18 through 23 is currently in execution. Another $1.6 billion is planned for 24 through 27. And in the PB24 budget for 24 to 28, $2.2 billion has been requested for submarine sustainment efforts. This much-needed resourcing is purposefully designed to help build and strengthen SIB capacity, capability, and resiliency. And these resources are primarily being utilized across 6 lines. And if you've been to a brief, which you probably have, with Matt Sermon or any of his folks from SIB, these will sound very familiar to you. Number 1 is supplier development. So this is to add not just capability, but capacity to our existing suppliers, expand the base of suppliers to reduce the single source risks and increase resiliency and robustness across the supply base, as well as improve first-time quality. The second is shipyard infrastructure, and this is to accelerate the investments in shipyard facilities, footprint, machines, fixtures, to replace aging fixtures with more modern machines that can increase the throughput. Strategic outsourcing to increase the supplier capacity by shifting non-core workload from the nuclear shipbuilders at EB and Newport News to free up their footprint and resources and enable them to focus on their core competencies, as well as to tap into workforce in different regions using different manufacturers, different shipbuilders, if that's the case. So, number 4, workforce development. This is near and dear to the entire SIB's success rate, is to train in current and future trades at sufficient rates and to build an adequate hiring pool for vendors and shipbuilders. So this is across our SIB. It's not just at the shipyards, it is also across the industrial base at our various second and third tier suppliers. The 5th is technology opportunities. So these are really focused on implementing advanced manufacturing processes to include additive manufacturing, non-destructive test imaging, digital imaging, to really remove known production risks and to reduce bottlenecks. This is an imperative, and we are putting a lot of effort into these efforts in particular to advance them and really bring those into our ability to increase our throughput by utilizing these new techniques. And lastly, government oversight, because of course the Navy ultimately is responsible, and we've got to ensure that we've got the proper oversight of our vendor base to support the required quality and schedule adherence. So overall, these 6 efforts, our core lines of effort are needed to support this 1+2 construction rate plus the submarine sustainment efforts. So what have we been able to do so far across all of these efforts? Certainly it takes time as we deploy these dollars into the industrial base to build buildings, commission tooling, grow the workforce, and see that increased production rate. So while we haven't yet fully realized the full impact of these investments, we have seen a pretty significant return to date. And so I'll cover a few of those now. 194 suppliers in 34 states have received some part of SIB funding to generate this increased production and increased capacity. Approximately 3.5 million man-hours have been outsourced strategically by EB and Newport News to key fabricators through either a focus factory model at EB that EB uses or through other means. And the goal is to increase that to 6 million hours per year by 2026. There have been approximately 1,000 new workforce members added and more than 120 second and third tier suppliers, with more to come each year as we continue to expand our pipelines. We've established dedicated training centers that have trained more than 3,500 workers since 2020, and SENEDIA certainly has thousands of workers that have been through these pipelines. And the other thing is to establish an industry-wide consortium. We talked about manufacturing, advanced manufacturing technology, and that is through an industry-wide consortium to supply these critical submarine components from 6 crucial submarine-specific metals that contribute to a high percentage of our troubled submarine components. So by shifting and proving out that we can do this through the additive manufacturing and advanced manufacturing technology, we can really increase the volume and really reduce some of those trouble areas that we've been experiencing. So, and then I'll say, and if you haven't had the opportunity, and hopefully you have seen the buildsubmarines.com logo, website, ads during the NCAA tournament, during the Military Bowl, during NASCAR, it certainly would be a great place for you all to go visit. It is a partnership with our nonprofit Blue Forge Alliance, and really the goal is to provide this hub of information and tap into, across the industrial base, a number of suppliers and partner those suppliers with people who are seeking to work in our business. We've had tremendous success so far. We've had more than 300,000 visitors to the website since December of 2022. So in a very short period of time, the reach has just exponentially increased, and we're getting really great feedback and really good throughput through that website. So more to come, and I advise you all to go visit. It's really cool. So all of what I just talked about, right? So is to shore up our own efforts to reach this 1+2. And we are focused, and we are absolutely deploying all of the elements that we can, and the resources and the efforts to uplift our industrial base to achieve this. But it's also crucial to support the AUKUS efforts. So AUKUS will generate a unique demand signal and opportunity for the overall industrial bases of Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Their involvement, Australia's involvement in the U.S. submarine industrial base, will build on our existing efforts to improve capability, capacity, workforce, and technology. This investment will also contribute to the necessary growth of Virginia-class SSN production from the 2 per year of SSNs that we just discussed to a rate of 2.33 in order to support both the U.S. Navy and AUKUS requirements. And through the sustained investment consistent with our ongoing strategy, we will increase the overhaul capacity and capability of our shipyards to get more USSN maintenance out of maintenance and back to the fleet, which will strengthen our defense industrial bases and meet our shared objectives across our Australian and United Kingdom allies. So I had the pleasure of being part of some of the front end of the AUKUS teams, and it was really important as we formed the beginning of the study effort to bring them to the United States and show them our industrial base and talk to them about the way we do things and where we have challenges. And certainly we had those same interactions with them in their countries. And there's really a shared challenges as well as shared talents that are going to be key for the whole effort. Taking the best of the best and looking across all of our industrial bases. And it was that interaction and what has led to this optimal pathway is really key to the success of the effort. So deepening our cooperation and integration across the submarine enterprise presents this unique opportunity as well for innovation and growth and mutual development through those very efforts. It will strengthen our existing bilateral alliance. It will contribute to the diversification of ideas, right? Different broadening of the industrial base will increase those ideas, and it will augment our collective technical and intellectual prowess and will lead to much needed advancements across multiple fields. So the partnership will also open up new markets and business opportunities, enhancing the resilience of all the nation's economies. This will pave the way for additional joint ventures, thereby fostering a shared sense of purpose, knowledge exchange, and a more connected community of subject matter experts. So in closing, and before we open it up for questions, I just wanted to impress upon you that we must recognize the time to execute is now. We must execute on all fronts: submarine design, construction, sustainment, the supplier base, and AUKUS. And when you look back in history, and I'm sure previous generations viewed bold goals with some trepidation or perhaps even some skepticism, such as sending a person to the moon. For us, it's going to be building these increased submarine capacity across our nation. But we're very clear-eyed about what this is going to take and what the goals we've established, and we're putting in place all of the resources and the mutual efforts to get this done. And so I will close with saying this is our time. This is an amazing opportunity that we have, and we must execute. And we are all in and really appreciate the collective efforts of this team. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and I think we'll turn it over to questions perhaps at this point.
Great, thank you for your comments. Eric Irwin, electric boat, retired submarine officer, proud to be a shipbuilder. There's a lot of focus on AUKUS Pillar 1, and perhaps, I learned a lot at Submarine Technology Symposium from your previous executive director, Admiral, about AUKUS Pillar 2. Can you give industry and the population here kind of a high-level overview of the Pillar 2 efforts, which probably are more in line? Andrew Erickson preceded you with a very passionate discussion on the threat we face in its current fit-up. It'd be helpful for the community. Thank you.
So AUKUS Pillar 1 is the development of the SSN capability. AUKUS Pillar 2 is a myriad of different capabilities we're looking at. I can tell you in the undersea, We are partnering on subsea and seabed warfare. We are partnering on AI, ML, very heavily involved with that. And then we are also partnering with unmanned undersea vehicle, torpedo tube launch and recovery efforts. We're also partnering on heavyweight torpedoes. Now, we already partner with Australia, equal partners on that heavyweight torpedo. United Kingdom has a different heavyweight torpedo, and we're taking a look at what's best of both breeds and seeing how we can, again, take that synergy from all three allies and bring them together. There's other areas we're working in, but those are the ones that primarily affect the undersea.
Apparently, there's quite a strong objection in Australia to one specific aspect of AUKUS, namely when it comes time 30, 35, 40 years down the road to begin retiring the boats. AUKUS requires that the nuclear waste be disposed of in Australia. The U.S. has the necessary infrastructure for that. We've had it for many, many years. Australia claims that they will have to begin from scratch. Wouldn't it be more efficient and more beneficial for the alliance if we took on that burden?
I'll answer that. So
Okay.
from my point would be is that nuclear propulsion, nuclear technology is a stewardship, it's a safeguards, and it's a cradle to grave ownership and responsibility. And that means from before you go critical to absolute to the safeguards and the stewardship through disposal. And so that is the commitment of nations who are operating and maintaining and stewarding nuclear power vessels. And so that's that was a decision that's been made right now, and that's the path we're on. Yes, sir.
Skilled workers are critical to successfully implement rockets. You mentioned programs within the United States doing extra training. Have we reached out to our partner nations to share strategies and lessons learned so we can do this possibly across boundaries?
Yes, we absolutely have. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, early on, we recognized that that was going to be a requirement of the AUKUS project, was to look across all of the nation's industrial bases and look at where the talent resided, where additional numbers were required. And that is part of the calculus as we go forward in executing, the work that we have before us, is to look trilaterally at, and certainly, the AUKUS has a couple different phases, as was discussed by Admiral Houston, but the workforce that is needed here in the U.S. In terms of keeping our submarine executing at the required rate, and with the sale of submarines to Australia, to ensure that we've got the right numbers of folks to do the backfill. And then as Australia stands up their capability within country, they also will be working with us in terms of getting training and doing kind of collaborative efforts that have already started, and some of which haven't yet started but are pending. So there's definitely an information sharing exchange, as well as just an understanding of what it's taken us to get to the rates that we've achieved, what the disciplines are, and then, as Admiral Houston just said, kind of best of breed, depending on SSN AUKUS and the design of SSN AUKUS and what the specific technologies that it will employ. That is that's another opportunity. So we look at these as opportunities to certainly take the best and to make sure that we are eyes opened with the impacts that will have and what would be needed to actually execute, ultimately the plan that's been laid out.
Mark Kenny, Ultra Maritime. I'd just like to thank both of you, Lisa and Houston, for sharing some time today with the industry. Senator, obviously your support continues to be crucial. On the maintenance side, Admiral, you provided the best news we've probably heard maybe in years, that 9% increase in operational availability. That's like Senator Reid getting 9% more paratroopers at the 82nd Airborne before the fight. That is truly a needle mover. I think it reflects on the CNO of giving this challenge to the operational leadership, those that have most at stake in this challenge. So my hat's off to you. We hope and pray that continues to increase. On AUKUS, many of us are engaging with senior leadership in all three nations as part of an industry provider. There is a degree of pessimism about getting to that end state, 2042. Will we actually be able to do all the things needed to get a sovereign capability? Ironically, the most positive force is the U.S. Navy, those with the most at stake, those with the steepest climb, those with the responsibility of naval reactors. What is your message? And you laid out SRF West, you laid out the 2032 Virginia sovereign capability to the naysayers that even though with $368 billion in Australia, we will be able to overcome these challenges and deliver that submarine. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Mark. And to be correct for the record, I went from 60 to 67%, so that's only 7%. I hope to get that additional 2%. And it was really a lot of good work that was already ongoing. And again, it's just tremendous teamwork. But I would say when you take a look at what we did with Nautilus underway on nuclear power in 1955, we built 41 for freedom ballistic missile submarines from 60 to 67. We built an additional 20 SSNs during that time. So in a matter of 12 years, we had created and built more than 70 nuclear-powered submarines, the only nation in the world that was building nuclear-powered submarines. We crewed over 100 nuclear-powered submarines with technology that had not been proven. And after 75 years of design, maintenance, and operation with Naval Reactors leadership, I think that there are significant challenges ahead of us. But I would say that the path that we are helping with our allies and with the trilateral nature of this and the expertise that we already have, and Australians are wonderful submariners. They are exceptional. Again, I qualified an Australian submarine. We do our most sensitive operations with them. We have U.S. sailors and Australian sailors and British sailors back and forth on our submarines right now. I think this is attainable. And when you take a look at what asymmetric capability a nuclear power submarine brings, it is clear why Australia would want this capability. And with Australia as our strategic partner in the Western Pacific for a free and open Indo-Pacific, why we need this. And again, I think this is attainable because of that relationship we have as allies. And I hope that answers that question.
Good afternoon, Paul Sigrist from Leidos Maritime. Question for you with regard to the other half of the AUKUS from Australia, specifically UK. A number of us will be heading over to the DESI show in September and have interactions with our UK counterparts. What can we from the industry side do to help with the UK portion of DESI, or I'm sorry, UK portion of AUKUS? And can you give us some insights on where you think we ought to put emphasis there? Thank you.
So in terms of collaboration across the industrial base, both with the UK and Australia, I will say we already have very strong collaboration with both Australia and the UK in various fronts, as was discussed. So as we embark, right, and as we go forward with AUKUS on the table as it is, I think a healthy exchange of ideas, and certainly understanding where the challenges are, but as well as the opportunities, would be really kind of the step to take, if you will. There are a number of things. The pathway, the optimal pathway, has a number of gates and a number of things that have been laid out, and certainly those things require criteria and gating that will ultimately lead to to moving on towards the next step to achieve that optimal pathway. Certain things, and I'll just say, certain things you probably can do, certain things you may not be able to do yet. I'm not sure really where your question, how much leaning in you want to do in terms of your interactions with the Australians. Exactly. I would be hard pressed to give you a direct answer to that, given the number of things that are pending, right? So I will say, within your existing relationships and with your existing partnerships that you have, certainly within the bounds that have already been established for each of your individual areas, that really struggling to answer it in a way that doesn't offer to lean in too far forward, right? And that certainly that is, I guess I'll just leave it right there.
Doug Thompson, Granite State Manufacturing. As a small business contract manufacturer with a pretty large installed base, we've been doing this for years. One of the great challenges that has gotten much worse to your sustainment is spares. We are constantly asked about spare parts on things that we've built that are in our sort of installed base. And it's disruptive and it's challenging to our ongoing Virginia-class and Columbia-class production. With the pretty much unprecedented move to the 17 ship set buy and the large quotes that are going in on that right now, this is a hard problem, I recognize this, but there's really a real opportunity maybe to finally try to integrate all of the spares information we have, all the data we have on what you need going forward, what we've seen in Virginia-class, to say when you award a contract to a company like us for another 12 ship sets of some product, or even 17 if it crosses over, to include the most common spares in that build contract so that we were building 3 extra of this and 5 extra of that and 7 extra of that at the part level when we're doing it in large production is a dramatically more efficient way to build spares than just DLA wanting to buy one of something in and of itself, all by itself. And I get more and more worried about this because we're seeing a big increase in borrow payback requests. Can we get this to support an availability and it's not needed till block 10, block 5, boat 6, or boat 10. And we try to do this swapping. That's going up. I'm worried about shortages in production. And I think the 17 ship set buy presents an opportunity to finally try to integrate spares in with full mainstream production.
And certainly we understand the disruption in terms of the cannibalization of new construction for maintenance, to support a maintenance availability. I will tell you that the material strategy that we've developed and that we've instituted is not only to, and this is for the in-service in particular, it's not just to increase the amount of dollars that we're putting towards material, but it's all about the phasing, right? It's all about the phasing. It's phasing it earlier so that it can keep pace and pace the availability so that the availability can be performed on schedule, as opposed to only buying, say, 40 to 50% of the material and waiting because you need an item, and then you're out there scanning scanning the base, trying to figure out where you can pull from to keep your availability on track. So there is a lot of effort being done in that area that I think will really pay dividends. It's yet to be seen because we've just laid in the funding and we're just getting started on that. But once it hits and those parts start rolling in and the pace of the availability is synchronized with the parts, we think we're going to see a real change. So.
And the one thing I'd like to jump in on that is we have a significant investment in buying spares right out the bat. That's part of that $2 billion we had, because when we initially acquired Virginia, we didn't buy all the spares we have. And the other thing I would say is that's worked very well is PEOSSN is looking back at the original blocks of Virginia, especially Block 1 and 2. And what they're doing is they're going forward with acquisition. They're buying things that are backwards compatible and making sure that we upgrade the systems. We just had an interior communication system that we are backfitting on Minnesota because there's no longer a vendor who will make the COTS equipment for that. So there's lots of stuff we're doing. The other thing I would address you with DLA is that all of the public shipyards were ordering parts individually with individual contracting from individual vendors, and it wasn't synchronized. So they may have ordered from one vendor, but we as a Navy didn't know we were having the failure rates that we did because none of that was centralized in our supply system. So now what we're doing is we're actually seeing, and so we can procure ahead of schedule and we can see the real demand and not buying alternative parts, et cetera. So I think we do have work with the 17 ship set. I don't disagree with that, but I think we are making a lot of strides in in-service maintenance, and we have a long way to go because it has been an area like it's something as simple as I'm working a EDS array on the same block of Virginia at Norfolk Naval, and I'm working it at Portsmouth, and my parts and my jobs are different, and it's via an automated work package. It should be identical, and it's not. And so that's the discipline we are now bringing to in-service maintenance. And it's not going to be an instantaneous fix, but because we have strong support on the Hill, so strong support in DOD, strong support in the Navy, we are going to get there.
Reed said at the beginning, this is an incredibly important strategic initiative. Thank you both, Admiral Houston and Ms. Radocha, for sharing your expertise on this important subject. And please, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause. We're going to take a short break. Please be back by 1:45. Here is the coveted.
Thank you. I wish I was.
Thanks for your comment. Eric Nortz,